There is a silent mistake happening every time these three names are linked to the Yankees. The automatic reading is to think about an immediate rotation upgrade. But what is really at stake here is not who arrives, but what the Yankees would be willing to sacrifice to get there. And that difference completely changes the analysis. This is exactly the kind of discussion that is part of the editorial DNA of Bronx Bomber News, because it doesn't start on the mound, it starts on the board. The Yankees enter this offseason with something very clear, and it becomes more evident the more you observe their behavior, not the rumors. They are in the market, yes, but they are not moving like a franchise pressured by outside noise or easy headlines. Freddy Peralta, MacKenzie Gore, and Sandy Alcantara appear as potential targets according to The Athletic, but the most relevant point of the report is not the quality of these pitchers, because that is already widely recognized. The center of the discussion is something else: the entry price. Each of these names would require a significant amount of prospect capital, and that completely changes the equation. This is not a simple swap of pieces. It is a decision that affects the foundation of the project. That high cost alone already acts as a strategic brake and shows that any progress would only happen within very specific parameters. When you connect this scenario to the broader context of the franchise, the picture becomes even clearer. The Yankees are coming off recent results that fell below the organization's historical standard, but the response has not been an impulsive rush toward quick fixes. Quite the opposite. The way the front office has handled the market suggests a conscious effort to avoid moves that could compromise future cycles. The cautious stance regarding the already known price of Cody Bellinger is not an isolated detail. It works as a signal. What you see is a management group more concerned with not creating a structural problem tomorrow than with masking the present through an expensive solution today. That does not eliminate ambition, but it does redefine priority. From there, the market stops looking like a shelf of options and starts functioning as an interconnected system. Every decision pulls another one with it. Sandy Alcantara illustrates this well. He does not appear as a random name placed on a generic list. There is real history between the parties. The Yankees tried to move forward on him last season. There was mutual interest, recognition of his on-field value, and the player's own desire to wear the Bronx Bombers uniform. That context matters because the conversations have already moved past the theoretical stage. The deal did not advance, especially due to financial hurdles, and that stalemate does not disappear over time. It matters now because the starting point is not neutral. It is a negotiation that has already hit clear limits. MacKenzie Gore, on the other hand, enters a completely different equation. Arbitration eligible and linked not only to the Yankees but also to the Orioles, Red Sox, and Padres, he automatically becomes a highly contested asset. This is not just about the arm itself. It is about age, contractual control, and projection within a competitive window that is still open. Those factors inflate the price almost automatically. Any attempt at a trade stops being a bilateral conversation and turns into a silent auction among organizations that are also thinking medium term. In that type of environment, the cost rarely remains rational. It grows as competition reveals itself. Freddy Peralta may represent the most delicate puzzle of the trio. The club option exercised for 2026 at $8 million indicates that the Brewers are not exactly motivated to move on from him. That contractual detail matters because it reduces urgency on the seller's side. At the same time, there are signs that Milwaukee could listen to offers, as long as the return comes in the form of pitchers who are either MLB ready or very close. Dodgers, Astros, and Giants have appeared as interested teams, which adds another layer of complexity. More competition means less leverage, and once again shifts the debate away from talent and toward opportunity cost. This is precisely where the initial hook becomes clearer. The biggest risk is not choosing the wrong name. It is choosing the wrong moment, because adding any of these three would not be a minor roster tweak. It would be a decision with a chain effect, capable of reverberating throughout the Yankees' entire development system. Prospects that leave today are depth that no longer exists tomorrow, whether as trade assets or as internal, cost-controlled solutions. And when this reading starts to come together, it becomes clear that the discussion goes far beyond simply reinforcing the rotation. It is also worth strengthening the community that prefers to see the game through this deeper lens. Leaving a like, subscribing to Bronx Bomber News, and taking part in the conversation is part of that, because this kind of analysis only grows when the fan base thinks like an organization, not like a short-term spectator. The deeper strategic analysis passes exactly through this filter. Real role on the roster, structural protection, and future optionality. None of these pitchers arrives with the label of savior. They arrive as heavy investments, which require giving up pieces capable of sustaining competitiveness for several years. The process matters more than the name in the headline, because the process defines the margin for error. When you look at elite organizations, the pattern repeats consistently. Well-run teams do not buy only peak performance. They buy a ceiling that makes sense within their own competitive timeline. The risk here is clearly asymmetric. If the player performs at the expected level, the upside is obvious. If he does not, the damage is not limited to finances. It hits structure, flexibility, and future response capability. And the counterpoint needs to be addressed without softening it. Prospects are a volatile currency, but they also function as protection against expensive mistakes. Alcantara carries a physical history that requires monitoring. Gore still shows consistency fluctuations. Peralta involves a negotiation with multiple interested teams and little incentive from the selling side. None of these negative scenarios is exaggerated or overly hypothetical. All of them are plausible, and that is exactly why the Yankees' strategic restraint makes so much sense within this context. In the end, the thesis is simple but uncomfortable. The Yankees seem less focused on who they can acquire and more attentive to who they cannot afford to lose in the process. This is not a sign of weakness. It is the behavior of a franchise trying to differentiate between merely competing and being truly well managed. So the question that remains is not which of these three you would prefer to see in the Bronx. The real question is, at what point does a trade stop being a reinforcement and start becoming a structural risk that the front office simply cannot afford to take?